Hmm. I'm going to start the recording process. So hopefully you see enough value here. We'll get that link to you, and you're welcome to, if you will, share the recording after the fact for those that could not have made it, if you will. Virtual donor-driven fundraising for small arts organizations in a post-COVID world. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about here in the objectives, and let me just go ahead and get these on the screen for you to see where we're headed. The recognition of the fact that the audience that we have, we've got 30 participants so far and about 40 signed up, and you really represent a wide gamut of the arts and cultural community. We have visual arts, performing arts, cultural organizations, historic organizations, some representatives from government, and clearly from an age and maturity point of view, we kind of run the gamut. At this stage, we've got, I know, folks that are, as nonprofits go, over 30 years of age and been around for a long time in Central Florida. And then we've got some folks that are relatively new. So I really want to make sure that as we go through the content today, I'm going to hopefully frame it in such a way that it'll be relevant whether you're just a startup and you're less than $250,000 budget, or you've been around for 30 years and you've got a $5 million budget, and whatever. So the objectives are on the screen, and again, I'm not going to read all of those to you, but the main thing and the highlight of the final third of the time this morning is going to be hosting a virtual event. And that's, of course, the challenge. Most everybody is in a position where they postponed or completely canceled any in-person event. And I would offer that what we're experiencing, and I don't know about you, it was probably as recently as 60 to maybe certainly 90 days ago, I was thinking to myself and saying to others, you know, just as soon as we get past this COVID thing and life returns to normal, thinking then, maybe about June or July. Well, now clearly, as you know, we're here almost to the end of August, and whatever normal is going to look like, nobody knows. And returning to some semblance of the way things used to be, don't know. But one of the things that you've probably experienced relevant to today is the retail world has figured out how to help us feel safe. And so as we go to a Publix, as we go to a Home Depot, you know, we see the extra precautions that are made. Obviously, everyone is wearing masks, or should be anyway. You know, we see grocery carts and shopping carts that have been wiped down. We see plexiglass between us and the cashier. What's the equivalent of that when it comes to fundraising? What's the equivalent of that when it comes to a nonprofit? So that's the opportunity we have, because the goal here is to continue to raise dollars. And in some cases, I think what you're going to learn is that virtual fundraising events may be much less expensive to pull off and actually realize even more dollars than you ever imagined before in your actual in-person event. So as the objectives go, I want to talk about, and this is that context I mentioned a minute ago, these are prerequisites, just like going to a college, university somewhere where you have to take X class before you can take Y class, the proverbial prerequisite. I want to cover three here this morning briefly that for you as a nonprofit, depending on your level of maturity, how long you've been around, you may say, I can check the box in all three of those. We've got those three prerequisites covered. Others may say, yeah, we got to go to work on that one. We need to address this one. And not unlike, if you'll pardon the analogy, if fundraising is like running a marathon race, then there are certain levels of readiness and preparedness that we all are at. Some of you this morning, as part of your normal morning routine, laced up your shoes and ran around the block, or ran 5 miles for that matter. Others might think, I'm not sure I'd be ready to do that. I probably need a doctor's exam, and I need to get some good shoes, and I probably need to walk a little bit. We're all at various stages. And so the prerequisites I'm going to cover here are meant to address those different starting points that each of you might have when it comes to raising gifts. So a very simple model I want to get up very quickly here, just a mental map, as I like to call it, is for existence of any nonprofit, is that whole focus on, are we relevant? Do we have an essential role to play in our community? Are we seen as linked and collaborating across the community? Of course, United Arts does a fabulous job of providing just that for arts organizations. Part of Terry's office and the Arts and Cultural Affairs with county government does that. But that whole idea of maintaining our relevancy, or making sure we're able to articulate that in all interactions with potential donors and existing donors, why we're still relevant. Arguably, you've got potentially a bigger challenge in making that argument, let's say, than Second Harvest Food Bank in this day and age when human needs and suffering have gone up and up and up each week, each month. So are we credible? This is another critical element we'll talk about in greater detail later, but from a donor confidence point of view, if I'm on your website and I'm clicking donate now and giving you $25, I may not care a whole lot about how well run you are and how efficient you are, probably trust that you're honest and operate with integrity. But if I'm going to give you $2,500, or as I'm going to define a major gift today for arts organizations in the 4 counties that are represented here in Central Florida, a $25,000 gift, I'm probably going to want to make sure that you're credible, you're well run, if there are credentials in your organization that are necessary for you to operate, that you have those, that you're transparent, that your 990s are uploaded to your GuideStar report. Those are the kinds of things that somebody giving at a higher level, which is a lot of what today is about, is going to be expecting. And then lastly, the visibility piece, always how to get the word out. Recently, I heard a young executive director stand in front of a funder and say, you know, we're the best kept secret in town. And the funder, a rather crusty woman, literally in her 80s, has said, and what part of that are you proud of? You know, so visibility is critical, and it's so much easier to do than it used to be when it comes to social media. But all 3 of those elements are critical to financial sustainability. And this prerequisite number 1 is an opportunity here to take a look at, and actually, and I'd love to hear, if you will, in the chat window, if you've not already opened that, to hear if anybody has actually had what I would call this existential conversation with staff and board. And these are some key questions. If you've not already, feel free to steal shamelessly, put them in a Survey Monkey, put them in on a form with lots of white space, pass them out to your board and ask them to ask and answer these questions. So prerequisite number 1, the mental map here, I'm not going to repeat that. You can see it on your screen, but you notice, and this is a bit of a segue into a little more in depth on this prerequisite, you can see asterisk at the bottom is a culture of philanthropy. So let's talk further about that, and we get into a culture of philanthropy, which is prerequisite number 2 in your capacity building. And what I'm saying in a culture of philanthropy is, keep in mind, and this may be a discussion you've had and everybody is in agreement and lockstep in your organization. Others may go, it's not my role to raise money. I don't ask people for money. Well, a culture of philanthropy doesn't necessarily mean that you ask for money as a volunteer, as an executive director, as a board member. The odds are, as a smaller arts organization, you may not have a dedicated development function or a department like a larger organization like the ballet or the Philharmonic and those mature arts organizations that have been around for a long time. But everybody does have a role to play, to be knowledgeable about what it is that you do and the impact you're having on the community, to be a champion everywhere I go, standing in line at Publix, talking to somebody about what I do as they ask, well, what are you into these days? And certainly to be a donor. So a culture of philanthropy is really about that. Everybody has a role to play in helping bringing in revenue, because revenue at this stage is oxygen, and without it, obviously, we're not breathing. So what is a culture of philanthropy? And this is the brief online poll here, and in your training aids, you've got a handout in there that is a checklist, and I'll just call your attention to that in the study guide, and it is actually the very first page inside. So if you see what's on the screen, you have the exact same document in your study guide. Feel free to steal shamelessly if you see value in it. Again, pass it out to everybody in your organization. It could be a conversation starter. It may be a top agenda item at your next virtual board meeting. All right, but the whole idea of beginning to get people to think about, well, what is a culture of philanthropy? What is culture in the first place? And then what's one specifically that focuses on, underscores, reinforces, amplifies philanthropy. So I'm curious if anybody is able to, and if you look at the question here on the online poll, if you don't already have a culture of philanthropy, which of the 9 items might you have to address first? So I'll give you just a moment, actually, even more detail. Here are those 9 items. If you were to go to work on one that perhaps you check off as least like you, in the unlike column, what would it be? And would you mind typing that number in the chat box? Which number of these 9 items that are objective in nature do you think you need to go to work on first to develop that culture of philanthropy? So just literally type in your chat box window the number that you need to go to work on. Please do so now. So I see a number 8. Everyone in the organization understands and fulfills their role in deepening relationships with donors. Excellent. Somebody else want to identify, what would you go to work on first when it comes to advancing, refining, developing, amplifying a culture of philanthropy? A couple other examples. What do you need to address to improve and create a culture of philanthropy? All right. One of the challenges that I would offer, and then we'll move on to the final prerequisite, is that the number 1 stumbling block to self-development is self-deception. The number 1 stumbling block to self-development is self-deception on the part of an individual or on the part of an organization. So not that anybody's deceiving themselves on this call, but if you have certain individuals in the organization that perhaps don't have an accurate reflection or picture, thank you for all the numbers showing up here, lots of number 8s that you would go to work on. These kinds of checklists, of which there are many out there, is a way to get people thinking and being open and honest and say, you know, we really do have room for improvement in this area or in that area, and so on and so forth. It's part of getting yourself ready to run that marathon race, rather than being in denial and thinking that you can make 26 miles when you don't jog on a regular basis. So number 3 here, if you will, when it comes to prerequisites, and I alluded to this earlier, this issue of donor confidence, and I really cannot reinforce it enough. There has been, and I know this is an outlier, but it's just one example, and in the world of intermittent reinforcement, it doesn't take but about once or twice a year for people to hear about something that go, oh my goodness, did you hear about the guy in Miami who got $330,000 in his PPP loan? Or he got more than that, actually, went out and bought a $300,000 Lamborghini in a nonprofit setting. So it doesn't take too many stories for donors out there to be fearful, to be mistrusting, and to be reluctant to give money because they don't have fully confidence in what it is you're doing and how you're operating. So how to build trust in your day-to-day operations is make sure that you're planning strategically. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. Many of you perhaps that have plans realize you have to rethink them because you're no longer able to give in-person performances, for example, which has been the real challenge for, of course, the arts community, especially if you're performing arts. But what are we doing to modify our strategic plan to respond to the reality of COVID? Or if we don't have a plan, are we going to finally pull that off this year because our survivability is critical to planning strategically? Acting with integrity is that, can you have people? I had a Shakespeare company in another state where we talked about inviting a major donor that they were courting to attend a board meeting. And they laughed literally and almost fell on the floor because they were so dysfunctional as a board. It was so inefficient. The board meetings were so poorly run, absent an agenda, absent anybody keeping, if you will, or riding saddle on the conversation. It was just not a good reflection. Like perhaps some of you can relate to long ago when you were dating somebody and getting significant and you were talking about bringing them to your family's home for Thanksgiving dinner. And you were reluctant to want to do that because of, oh my goodness, I don't know if I want to introduce them to the chaos that happens at my house at Thanksgiving. So to laugh about it a little bit, but to make sure you're operating with integrity, you could videotape, and it's so easy to do now, of course, because you're doing virtual board meetings, all your meetings. And if a donor could say, well, I'd love to see how your board interacts. Might I view one of those recordings or at least a portion of it? Could you do that? Are you operating with integrity? And then most importantly, from a donor confidence point of view, in this last prerequisite, are you operating with integrity? So as I said at the beginning, the whole goal here is to have you check off, yep, we're taking care of this. Yeah, we got a culture of philanthropy. Yeah, we work hard on acting with integrity and building donor confidence. Or no, gee, we've got room for improvement there. We'll go to work on it. And part of today may be a catalyst for you to kind of rally the folks, the other 2 staff members you have, the other 11 board members you have, and really begin to address some of these issues that can impact your ability to raise money. So one last quick thing I mentioned earlier, and just with a yes in the chat box, how many of you are on GuideStar regularly and update your profile? Would you please type yes in the chat box if you know about GuideStar, you log in regularly, and you're using it. Excellent. I see lots of yeses show up. It is the place. There are other sources and other rating, if you will, organizations, but GuideStar is one of the best known. And if you're not familiar with GuideStar, 1.4 million nonprofits, all of them in America are there. You are there as well. And I can find out a lot about you or not based on how robust your information is on GuideStar. It's a great place to build credibility by being transparent. So how does the community know about your organization? What did they think of you? How do you know? So GuideStar is that great source. So you see how much easier it is if you're trustworthy to be able to go tell the world. So one other quick check-in point before we get into the 3 approaches to raising money and finishing up with virtual fundraising is a more focused survey about the level of readiness your organization might have when it comes to fundraising. So that again is another handout in your training guide. And I'm just curious if you would just type in question number 1, how well does your organization currently perform fundraising? Type in A if it's working well, or B, needs work. Give you about 10 seconds to do that. In the chat box, type in the A or B response to question 1 that you see up there. Got some mixtures here, A and B, you all can see that. How about question number 9, excuse me, just to jump to that, if you would type in the answer to question number 9, what would make you feel more confident in your ability to be successful in fundraising? Just a word or a phrase, more time in the day, okay? Needs work, B. Again, question number 9, what would help you feel better organization? So this becomes not unlike the analogy of getting ready to train for a marathon. You know, I need to increase my aerobic activity. I need a pair of shoes. I need more board time. I need a professional staffer. You can see what's coming up. Again, as it's doing on this very limited interaction that we have, use this as a conversation starter. Send it out to the board in advance, get it filled out. Maybe you do it anonymously to make sure people are open and honest and not in denial and not wanting to see what's going on. But it's just another tool to begin to evaluate your level of readiness as a smaller arts organization, potentially, to go out and do fundraising. So having said that, let me just take a moment and Katie, I'll let you monitor this. If there's a burning question where you're just not able to stay with me because of the pace that we're moving now, 25 minutes into the session here, something you need to ask right away, I'm just going to pause for just a moment and type that in the window. Q&A about the content we'll address at the end today, but is there an interim question that somebody might have you need to ask about now? Okay, moving right along. 3 approaches to raising money. Let's just talk about these very briefly. And this is one of the challenges, and it's hard not to do, and that's to tell the world how wonderful you are. So you've met somebody on a dating service app, and in the old days you met at Starbucks. In the new days you have a virtual call, and the entire time they tell you about themselves. And after the visit ends, the call ends, the interaction ends, you talk to your best friend and say, well, how was it? What was it like? How did it go? They say, I don't know. They spent the whole time talking about themselves. It's just a turn off. All right. Not bad or wrong to discuss a little bit about who you are. But again, if you're telling people these kinds of things that you're seeing on the screen and they're learning about it and trying to understand who you are, I'm not sure they'll know how different you are than the next organization that's doing similar things in Osceola County and you're in Lake County. So it's understandable. You want to talk about the organization, highlight it, not bad or wrong. But again, as I said earlier, there's so much doubt and mistrust. We can't believe what we hear. We can't believe what we see in still pictures. We know about Photoshop, and we can't even believe what we see in video any longer. So if your way of communicating out there to the community is using these mechanisms and talking about yourself, keep in mind there's a natural built-in skepticism, and younger generations in particular indicate in lots of research they don't trust marketing messages. Technique-driven is probably what most folks are doing. And have been doing and may be on this very call to figure out how to continue to do. Let's talk a little bit about the real challenges of events-driven fundraising. And what I would predict would be the end of events-driven fundraising as we know them. Back to what I said earlier about the retail outlets that have figured out how to make you feel safe when you go to the grocery store or Home Depot. Kudos to the nonprofit, if you will, especially an arts or cultural organization that could help me feel safe by attending one of your live exhibits, one of your live performances. It's going to be virtual in so many cases. So I'm just going to go ahead and get all these on the screen here very, very quickly. Some of the reasons why events-driven fundraising is not likely to be successful in the short term, and I would offer in the long term, we're going to see the explosion of fundraising events done virtually throughout Central Florida, throughout the nation for that matter, for all these obvious reasons. So you may be wringing your hands right now because you relied on that springtime event, that summer gala, that fall festival where most of your money came in to fund your organization throughout the remaining 12 months. Perhaps you had other ways in which you were bringing revenue in, but if most of your eggs were in the event basket, I know you may be laying awake at night wondering how you're going to make ends meet. And of course, that's what we're here to talk about. So the whole idea of relying on events can be problematic in a world in which people are afraid to be around others. So having said that, perhaps stating the obvious about fundraising events that are face-to-face, keep in mind if you have successful events, we've got a group in South Florida that has done a variation on Dance with the Stars, another one, America's Got Talent variation, and now you're uploading your entry into the event via a video. And the judging process continues on, the fundraising continues on, they're raising money by people paying to vote for particular acts or dancers. There's still ways to do it. If you've got an event that's working for you in person, that's great, but if nothing else, have fun, be creative, and figure out how to maybe transition to pivot, to use that phrase again, to a virtual approach to fundraising. But let's really talk about donor-driven, and this is really the critical message of today. And then we're going to talk about how to do this in a virtual event, if you will, manner. So again, in that dating analogy, it's them, if you will, telling you about what they value, what they care about, what's important to them, what their family traditions dictate, what their philanthropic goals are, and figuring out how that may align with what it is that you do, the mission of your organization, being donor-driven. Systems and processes, what do you need to put in place to make sure that the donor is at it doesn't mean the patrons, the students, the clients that you serve are not important, but there's an equal role in a culture of philanthropy to say our donors are a critical focus of what it is that we do in a donor-driven world. And then lastly, and I'm going to kind of focus on this maybe over the next 10 to 15 minutes, and that's that whole idea of moving from transaction-based, I click on a button on your website, I buy a table at your gala or a golf tournament, I buy a piece of your art, it's a transaction, you've got my $49, you got my $490 or whatever it may be, and we're finished for the year. It's just that, it's been a transaction. How to transform that into lifelong investors, but it's really about earning the right to have them give at that higher level, as I mentioned earlier, at the $2,500 level, or ideally the $25,000 level when it comes to major gifts. And in most cases, this approach is a breakthrough. It does take more time to nurture and develop, but you don't have to worry about losing these individuals as donors even during this time of COVID. So here's an example. There is no, as I know it anyway, Leesburg Neighborhood Theater. There we go. I hear a dog bark. So if everybody would mute themselves.
No. TV. It's on TV.
If you would mute yourself, please, that would be great. So I don't have to do that. Or I can do that. Thank you very much. That was funny. Now, that's right there with the lizard story. It happens, no problem. So here's a statement. Hypothetical as it may be, the Leesburg Neighborhood Theater exists to give. Remember, I love, if you will, what it is you do at the theater. I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the expertise. I don't have the background, but I love this organization called the Leesburg Neighborhood Theater that does. This is not a replacement for the mission statement, okay? It is, however, an opportunity to make the donor a primary focus as well. Another example, if you will. The Community Arts Center of Kissimmee exists to give art lovers, if you will, champions, because you can read it. So again, I really love the visual arts. I haven't got the time to create an organization for it, but I do know one that I really trust, I have confidence in, and I financially support them. So what you do out of creating these statements, and it may be a good exercise for you to consider, is to actually craft a donor-driven fundraising statement. It may or may not ever go on your website, but it certainly would be in your case for support in any communication you have with donors to let them know what you're about. So keep in mind, as you move into a donor-driven focus, I would offer that you consider those kind of statements. So moving right along, for the sake of time, let's talk about the core of what we're about here in our remaining 10 to 15 minutes, and that's the 5 steps to donor-driven major gift. The case for support. Just with a yes in the chat box, would you type in, do you have an existing case for support that spells out to a potential donor clear, compelling reasons why I should become an investor in your organization? In the chat box, please go ahead and just type that in if you have a yes or a no. All right, I see no's and I see yeses, and you all can see those populate. So let's talk a little bit about that whole idea, case for support. There's a little community theater in North Carolina. This is a $1 million campaign to build a second theater. The case for support, something I don't know and understand who you are and what you're about. Over a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, I can sit and read through your case for support, look at your PDF that you send me, watch your video, and I can learn about who you are. This is a children's dance theater near Charlotte, North Carolina, that highlights in a very simplistic kind of 3-part trifold document who we are, who we've been in the past, where we want to go today and tomorrow, and why we're trying to raise the money. This is that Shakespeare example I alluded to earlier, that whole idea of saying in a nutshell in just a few words. And typically the yesterday, today, and tomorrow becomes a good structure if you don't already have one, in building your case for support, which gets us to this key element. If you're going to launch into major gifts, if you're following with me so far, then I would really invite you to use this case for support tutorial, put it up in Google Sheets or Google Document, and get people to participate in helping you create it. Don't try to do it all by yourself if you don't have one. As a result of using the tutorial, you're going to have an opportunity either to validate your existing case, okay, and make improvements, or produce your very first case. One key caveat before we move on is, if you're developing, refining, updating, creating for the first time a case for support, don't underestimate the benefit and the power of engaging existing donors. Let them talk to you about why it is they are donors. They are the best folks to go to when it comes to building your case for support. So it's an opportunity to listen and learn from them and help them participate in creating that case. Next is prospect identification. We have a clear, compelling case for support. Now we want to introduce it to donor prospects. So where do you find these people? Now, some of you are familiar with Giving USA and its annual report. These are the 2018 numbers, and here's 2019. All bets are off from 2020. We don't know what philanthropy is going to look like in most cases in 2020, and won't know until 2021. The stock market is back at record levels. Those with high net worth probably have no less money now than they did at the beginning of the year, because we hit the trough in investment markets and it's back up again. So don't make assumptions about your donor's capacity to give. Just realize that, and most importantly here, 68 pennies out of every dollar given philanthropically last year came from individuals. So you may say, gee, we need to apply for another grant. That's important. We need to participate with United Arts, certainly. But by all means, don't underestimate the power, the benefit of entering into an individual focused donor driven campaign that you run, that you're in charge of, that you're able to control, and frankly, hold yourself accountable to accomplishing. So demystifying, one place to go to find donors is certainly existing arts organizations and nonprofits throughout the region. Go to their websites, get their annual reports, begin to compile a list of folks that may not be in your database. We like to use an organization called Info USA out of Iowa, where you can buy lists. And I just did a little bit of preliminary research using them. Lake County, if you go to Info USA, I do not have any proprietary interest in Info USA, and put in these parameters: Lake County, individuals with annual incomes of $100,000 or above, who have a net worth of $500,000 and a home valued at $500,000, who give to the arts. That there's 110 individuals on that list. You can buy that list today using your credit card and getting an Excel spreadsheet within about an hour for $99. So where do you find these folks? Seminole County, same parameters. Obviously, population dictates the number of folks that you may or may not see. In Seminole County, there are 264 individuals in Info USA's database. They've got about 210 million homes in their database. You're in it, just like being in a credit bureau, Experian, Equifax, and so on, and in Seminole County. In Orange County, of course, is the largest population in the four-county area, actually. We got 791 individuals who fall into this category. And then lastly, in Osceola County. So where do we find these donors, these folks that we may invite to a virtual event to nurture and develop and cultivate relationships? They're relatively easy to find. One place to start is buy the list, distribute this list among your board. How many of you know these individuals, and begin to build relationships with new donor prospects? In the Q&A in a minute, we can talk about existing donors, but this is really about engaging new donors and asking for larger dollar amounts. So moving right along, virtual awareness events. So hosting the event, just like you would normally mail an invitation to somebody, now we're going to email an invitation. Evite or Eventbrite is obviously a very popular platform. We're planning a 60 to 75 minute, likely using Zoom, my favorite, but it's up to you what video platform you might use. Don't underestimate the power of a host committee. So I get my Evite, my Eventbrite digital invitation. I click on the button, it pops out of the card. You all have seen it. Looks like a wedding invitation coming out of a card. And there's the host committee. There's the mayor, the head of the, if you will, the county commission, the president of the state college, a celebrity, somebody who's well known, is listed as the host committee, inviting us to attend this event. Again, the host committee members just have to lend their name and affiliation to the event. But remember, from a credibility point of view, I don't know you from Adam, but as I'm looking at this invitation, I go, oh, well, there's the mayor. Well, there's the chairman of the school board. Gee, I know those folks. If they've decided to align themselves with you, that makes you noteworthy already. So here's a key way to begin, back to a culture of philanthropy, to get your board involved in at least fundraising to start with, asking your board to invite 3 to 5 couples they know to attend the event virtually, not unlike the VIP tables in the old days at the ballroom, at the hotel, at Disney, when you checked into the registration desk and you had a different color name tag because you were at a VIP table. You can do the equivalent of that with your board being willing to underwrite the cost of a meal. So you don't have to inform everybody coming to your virtual event, but you certainly can ask 3 to 5 individuals and each board member to underwrite the cost. And it could be a pizza that's delivered. It could be a wine and cheese package from a local distributor that's delivered to the door of the couple I, as a board member, have invited on that Saturday night as an extra added treat and bonus. So in keeping in mind, from a cost point of view, we've got Eventbrite at less than $20 a month for an account. We've got Zoom at less than $20 a month for an account. And then the food, in this case, we're asking people, if you will, on the board to cover the cost of. Not for everybody coming to your event, just for a select group that those board members will own and do follow-up with. A creative theme planned event, fast-paced, rapidly moving, have fun with it. If you're performing arts or visual arts, there's so much that you can do in the course of a 45 to 60-minute video presentation. From individuals that are speaking, testimonies that are given, students that talk about their experience in the class, teachers and how kids' personalities are transformed as a result of learning about puppets or graphic arts or performing arts or whatever, putting together a fun, fast-paced, informative program. We do recommend you having an MC there. And keep in mind, another key element is the case for support that's now been, remember, you don't have to print them. Now they're a PDF. They're emailed to everybody who attends or accepts the invitation and RSVPs for your event, and make sure the Master of Ceremonies references it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we move into our next little vignette about our organization, I'd like you to grab your case for support and turn to page 11, because there you're going to see a picture of Susan, and Susan's a student you're about to hear from right now about her experience in our art class and how it's really transformed her and how much she's fallen in love with art. Just bring it into the conversation, bring it into the video, if you will. You may even declare, and this is an added bonus, I know nothing about you. I get the invitation. Okay, it's 8 weeks out. I can get that in my schedule. It's on a Saturday night. Okay, that doesn't interfere with work. I don't have to attend. I'm going to be able to do it virtually at home. I've been invited by a neighbor who happens to be on your board. And in that invitation, you said, and be part of the first annual Artistic Community Impact Awards for Leesburg, Kissimmee, Winter Garden, you fill in the blanks. You're not awarding and picking the award, excuse me, you're giving the community a chance in advance to name the student, the adult, the business, and the organization that have done the most to impact the arts in your territory, your boundary, your jurisdiction, whatever it may be. It could be one more thing that you would add to your virtual event that would cause me to want to attend. Oh, they're going to give a Lifetime Achievement Award to X. I know her, she was the principal of this, whatever. So it's just one more reason why I might attend. It elevates the credibility of your organization. What gives you the right to do it? Well, why not? As an arts organization to declare, and then it becomes an annual event. So people look forward to the 4th annual and the 5th annual and the 16th annual Community Artistic Impact Awards as facilitated by fill in the blank, your organization. So one more reason for me to attend your event. And keep in mind in the invitations and throughout the conversation, do not bring up the issue, and this is going to be foreign for many of you, this is not a fundraising event. It is the first date. It is too soon to ask for money. If you'll pardon the analogy, it'd be like me meeting you literally at Starbucks in our first date after meeting on the dating app and me asking you to get intimate with me. It's too soon. So many times we lose money, we leave money on the table, we turn off potential donors, or we get a go-away gift because the very first time I met you, I'm asking you for money. So if that works for you and gets you the money you need, great. But I'm really advocating you consider a different approach. Don't abandon those methods that work, but do recognize you need to develop a group of folks, and here's the analogy that I keep belaboring, to fall in love with you. And once I'm in love with you, you don't need to ping me every 6 months in your capital campaign. You don't need to send me a year-end letter and an appeal. You don't need to point me to your new donate button because I've committed to you. I'm going steady, or the ultimate analogy, I have fallen in love and I want to get married. I'm writing you into my estate and I'm going to give you a major 6-figure gift at the time of my death. Okay. So again, remember, include donors every aspect of the way in this process. So now our event is over with, what do? Prospect cultivation is key. And when it comes to raising major gifts from donors, this is where your board can step back in. So obviously, if I've invited those hypothetical 3 to 5 couples, I need to be calling them a couple of days later, maybe even depending on the relationship, texting them right after the event. Susan, George, Bill, Tom, Jose, Mary, wasn't that great? Look forward to telling you more about what you heard tonight. Don't ask for money, it's too soon, all right? Maybe there's an opportunity to invite people, and I'll just expose this whole list because prospect cultivation is going to be determined by, in many cases, what you do as an organization, but invite people to attend a virtual rehearsal, a virtual audition, a virtual arts class, to meet with students. It's so easy in this day and age with smartphones and cameras, much like we're doing right now, and some of you are on this call using whatever device that you're using, It's so easy to bring people into your world, even though they're not physically there, and being able to have them learn more and more about you. With this last point, back to credibility, is inviting them, because now after our event, weeks and months of cultivation activities and touch points have occurred. We've had multiple dates. I've attended a class virtually. I listened to a performance virtually. I got to meet some students online in a chat that they have. I've gone to your Facebook page. I've read your case for support. And at some point in time, I've made the decision, my partner and I have made the decision, my spouse and I have made the decision to become investors. So whoever has the dog that's barking, could you, I think that is, let me do that. There you go. I think I got that figured out. So it goes right up there with that lizard story. So maybe invite them to a board meeting. Because remember, the savvy donor who wants to read and learn all about you, looks at your GuideStar report, they're really worried about what you're going to do with their money, because there's that natural level of mistrust going on across the board in all institutions in our society. Sorry. So make them feel comfortable. Invite them to attend virtually or literally a board meeting, maybe not the whole board meeting, but to meet the board, to see how you all operate, to get the agenda in advance, and just to see hopefully the level of emotional maturity and efficiency that you have on your board. Or if you don't, you got some work to do there, but it may be one more way to put the proverbial, if you will, ribbon on the package at the very end, to have them feel comfortable and confident that writing you a check for $50,000 to fund operations, to fund scholarships, and to put a little money in your new endowment is a wise investment, because I've fallen in love with your community arts organization. I love what you do in teaching students the arts. I love your puppets and what it is whatever. So the prospect cultivation is critical. And then if you've done this right here, and keep in mind to get systematic about it, because as a result of your awareness event, if you come away with 10 individuals that become possible donor prospects, that's a lot of folks, especially if you're just adding this to your plate of other things you need to manage and handle. So this is a way to systematically analyze those donors that you've been cultivating and really narrow it down to the folks that are your hottest prospects, if you will. And this is a little checklist here, the scoring matrix, for you to sit around with a board, sit around with staff. What do we know about this folks? Well, you know, I know they just finished buying a new house in Islesworth, and it cost about $2.5 million, because that's a public record. And the last meeting I saw them attend, they were in a Mercedes-Benz that I know cost at least $110,000, whatever. Using publicly available information, using anecdotal information to begin to get a better feel for the person's wealth set. Remember, you've been dating them all along. They've been dating you all along. So this becomes a way to objectively look at and actually score the likelihood of the prospect or the donor becoming an actual ongoing investor. So if you've done this right, they may say meet virtually. There's not a sales pitch. There's really not an ask. It's a closing of the deal, because they've said, gee, we're ready for you to come to our home or meet with you virtually. We've been talking about it for months now. You've shown us your case for support. We see opportunities for funding scholarships, new educational teachers, new supplies, you fill in the blank, whatever it may be. And we've decided we'd like to become investors. So you're not there making a sales pitch. They're telling you how much money they want to invest. And keep in mind, one key thing you see underscored here as we wrap up is you are a problem solver. Remember, and it's a world that for many on this call, you may not be able to relate to, but there are folks in Central Florida that give away some of their wealth every year. It is in their DNA, it's in their family traditions, it's in their faith and belief system, it is in the requirements from their CPA who says you need tax deductions, whatever the motivation. It's a world that, you know, as we hear about Warren Buffett assembling billionaires and convincing 50 of them to give away half their wealth. So Steve Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is worth $100 billion. So what can he do with 50 billion? And how much can he do? All right. So it's a world that we don't live in, we don't understand, don't operate, but there are those folks who are joyful about it. They're required to do it. The Lord calls them to do it. Their accountant calls them to do it, whatever. So this is an opportunity for you to help make sure they believe in you. They see you as credible and you solve a problem for them. because they've heard about mismanagement. They've seen slipshod operations at nonprofits. They know how money can be wasted by folks that get it, if you will. They're looking for somebody reliable, somebody they can count on, and you're helping them solve a problem, especially if there's churn in their giving pattern or they're open to new possibilities. So you're solving a problem. You're not asking for money. You're actually helping them. As I like to ask the boards of directors, how many of you like to ask people for money? Rarely does a hand go up. Ask the same group, how many of you like to help people solve problems? Lots of hands go up. And literally, you need to think about it that way when you go and have the actual virtual or in-person meeting. And then certainly building in follow-up, ongoing. The theater example I gave you earlier, and this is public information. There was a naming opportunity for the new Stage 2 theater for Hart Theater, and Daniel and Belle Fangmeyer gave $200,000 to get their name on the theater. So some folks will say, I don't want anybody to know I gave you a gift. We don't prefer anonymous gifts, but somebody may say, I don't want to be noted at all. This is private between me and your nonprofit. But in many cases, they'll say, gee, you can list me in your newsletter. You can put me with your list of donors. However you may do that, let the donor tell you how they want nurturing and follow-up and engagement. And keep in mind, this may come up as a question that we'll get into in just a minute. You all let me throw a lot at you very, very quickly, so I realize you may feel overwhelmed. Typically in the ask, we recommend if you have a capital campaign around capital projects, people do like to give to things they can visually see be built, okay? But in one theater, we had somebody paid for the new update in the LED lighting system to save thousands of dollars a year in electricity. There's a theater in Southwest Florida that gave away the naming rights, and I know this has happened in Orlando, for a chair or for a bathroom facility. You know, there may be places to put name tags all over your building, capital projects. There may be operational gifts, if you will, and there may be gifts to endowment. So you may want to talk about what we will call the three-part ask, and really identify a total number and a certain percentage that you've learned over the months of listening your way to the gift, what they want to give when it comes to funding scholarships versus a new computer system versus a new software application for your creative arts that you use, or whatever it may be. So give them the chance to give to all three buckets: capital project, operations gift, and endowment. And so that is it when it comes to the issue of a solicitation and the 5 steps. Let's do a quick review here, and then we'll open it up. We've got a comfortable amount of time here at the very end to deal with Q&A. And what I'd like to do, at this stage, questions that you may have, if you wouldn't mind typing them into the chat box. We've got 32 people on the call, so having everybody try to talk and open up mics may be difficult. But if you got a question about this, I've covered it so very, very quickly. Thank you for letting me do that to you. We do have it recorded so you can listen to it again. Questions, what's that immediate, gotta ask, gotta say that anybody might have? Please type it in the window. And I've got one immediately from Peter, and this, you know, I was on one, Peter, it's a great question. And this is the beauty of, as I said at the beginning, I would predict that half of you a year or two from now going, why in the world we've ever done in-person events? These virtual events work so much better. I was on one 3 weeks ago for an environmental organization that had 1,300 people. Now, imagine what the cost is for a ballroom to accommodate 1,300 people at a Disney hotel, let alone the food and all of the things that you've got to do. So I would offer you a target, depending on the size. You should be happy if 50 attend. If you have 300, you've hit a home run. So anywhere from 50 to 300 people, we're finding in the ones that we're doing is a good number to expect. It's so easy to attend. We had a couple of board members say recently, you know, I talked to my friends, they're all snowbirds. This is Southwest Florida. And they said they won't be in town. They're going to be going back to Connecticut. But that's okay. And it dawned on them. They didn't even think about it. It's like, oh yeah, this is virtual. They could attend the event from their home back in, you fill in the blank, Cincinnati, Des Moines, Boston, or wherever. So 50 to 250, 300 would be great, but I wouldn't limit it. At this stage, the only limitation you have is Zoom. If you're using Zoom, you may have to spend an extra $10 a month to get a Zoom room that will accommodate 1,000 people versus 100 people. But I would say the more the merrier, with one caveat, and that's the follow-up. What would you do if you have 30, 40, 50 high net worth individuals who attended your event, and you do a follow-up evaluation, by the way, and they're all excited and enthusiastic and want to learn more? So you may be happy if 11 people show up. I'm happy 31 people are on this call. So great question, Peter. Thank you. Anybody else? Next question that you might have. We've got about 5 more minutes. What are the key hooks? I like this question here, the key hooks to getting people to attend. Remember, and this is just an assumption, I don't know you at all, never even heard of your organization. Now I get the digital invitation, if you will. And first of all, I see a host committee that builds immediate credibility. All right. I see the community artistic impact awards that you're going to be giving. It's at a convenient time. If it's a board member who's invited me, then gee, I'm going to get a meal out of this. And it does build in a little bit of quid pro quo, sort of guilt slightly twisting of the arm. Sure, John, we'll attend your event. Thanks for buying us dinner. What time will the food show up? You know? So multiple reasons why somebody may attend. So there's the credibility of the host committee. There's plenty of time to work it into schedule. Gee, it's not a big investment. Think about it. It's an hour and a half, 2 hour, 2.5, 3 hour a gala at Disney, and I live in Leesburg. Now I've got to figure an hour and a half to get there. I've got to deal with I-4. I've got to find a parking spot. I got to deal with the thunderstorm that I may run into. Think of all the advantages of having a virtual event where you don't have those kinds of things. So highlighting the convenience, the ease, and realizing one other caveat, by the way, in the invitation is the concern about technology. One of the things that I've been told by many that really the COVID world has done, it's likely FaceTime as an Apple application, but how many grandparents have learned to have conversations with their grandkids using their iPhone? So the world has gotten a whole lot more comfortable with the technology, but you may even have a footnote asterisk in your invitation. If you have some specific technical questions, we'll be glad to help you out. And a variation on that, we've got a couple of situations where folks have said, I've got some elderly folks in my gated community I'm going to invite over for a viewing party. I'll feed them at my house, if you will, and we'll gather together and watch the event on our big screen TV. So again, back to the question of key hooks to get people interested and involved. Other questions here in the remaining couple of minutes that you might have? Questions, comments, anything at all? What I will do then, and tossing it back to you, Katie, as we get through the Q&A, certainly with no cost or obligation, I know you can contact Katie and Raphael and Terry and ask for resources available throughout the 4-county area that is the footprint for United Arts. I'm available if you've got questions. We will have the recording linked to you relatively soon. That will be something feel free to share, steal shamelessly on any of the materials that I have sent you. The key thing I'm hoping that you'll get out of today is an added sense of confidence and the ability to say, you know, we can pull this off. And by the way, in a virtual event, just like we've talked about and joked about with my lizard story and the dog barking, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. So when you have your virtual event, just like those of you that are watching the Democratic National Convention are all streaming live, you see they have some glitches, they have some hiccups. Somebody's looking in the wrong direction. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect and polished. And just like being literally at the ballroom at the Peabody Hotel and having the AV system go out. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse us. We'll be back with you in a minute. It's okay. So practice is important. If you're a performing arts group, you're used to rehearsals, have a rehearsal with your event. But I really hope you feel confident to go out and give this a try. It is the way the world is going, and virtual fundraising should be at least one new revenue stream in your overall mix of fundraising. It's right at the noon hour. Katie, I'm going to toss it back to you for any closing comments. Thank you all for your time and attention and letting me throw so much at you so very, very quickly. Good luck. Keep your mask on. Stay safe.
Thank you so, so much, Dr. Curtis. Just wanted to overall just say thank you to Terry and the Arts and Cultural Affairs Office so much for reaching out to United Arts and sending it out to all of our grantees and everyone involved. And thank you so much, Dr. Curtis. I think we can all agree. I'm looking at the group chat now. Everyone thinks this information was incredibly helpful. I got a lot of new ideas out of it. We'll be sending out this recording to you all. And of course, if you have any questions, please just email. You can see Dr. Curtis's information there, but also you can email me and I can get you anything you need. So thank you so much.
Be well, be safe. Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful day.